Welcome back to DDwithMaqC, and this it's an afternoon here. We are honored with the lovely presence of a very fine gentleman with a very good story from Kiambu to the world. So we've gone through quite a bit of early days and into your high school, and how do you perform at the end of your time at Starehe? Do you do from 5 and 6 from there? How is the journey from that point?
Okay. Well, Starehe was a very interesting space. So first of all, Starehe is an interesting contrast because it's this highly disciplined school with ridiculous amounts of freedom. Like, you know, I tell people, like, we were boarders and we could go home like any day of the week, like you know, because there was like on a Monday, for example, or in Monday to Friday, you know, your lessons end at 4:30. Then you have like an assembly, and then by 5 you're all done, and the dinner is at 6, about 6. The roll call before dinner is at about 6:20. So you have 1 hour, and you could go to town. You could leave the school, go home if you were from near, or you could just, you know, take a matatu ride. We used to like to take matatu rides.
Number 9.
Number 9, go around and and those were number 9s were the hottest matatus those days.
Yes, they were. I don't know if they still are, but yes, they were.
Yeah, and so there was so much freedom. So, sorry. And you can imagine now on a Saturday, class ends at 1. So between 1 and 6, you could go out. On Sunday, after church ends at 11, you could go out. So you had so much freedom. You could be visited at any time. You could bring any kind of food, but there was a lot of discipline. So I think it was a very nice place for
an interesting contrast,
where you're learning. It's sort of a lot of growth because you're sort of being taught how to manage yourself. You don't, there's rules, but then, you know, learn how to work with the rules and those kind of things.
It's an important philosophy. Is it the philosophy of the founder?
Yes, yes. Jeffrey Griffin. So Starehe had 3 founders, but the one who was now the leader of that team, Jeffrey Griffin, that was sort of his philosophy. He was director for the National Youth Service for a long time, so he had that kind of paramilitary aspect to him. But I think he also just believed in training the boys to be young
responsible,
men. Yeah. Yes, to be responsible. So you have to give them freedom, give them space, allow them to air out their views. So there was a lot of, I would really say it was a lot of freedom. So here I am at home. I'm not getting so much pressure on my academics. At school, there's no pressure. Like, you do you. So at some point, you learn how to find yourself, and you say, okay, make your own decisions. You're not studying because the teacher said, because you've decided I want to do this. So that was an interesting space, and I think initially being a day scholar was nice, but then at some point I realized that when you're a day scholar, you're away on the weekend, and all the fun in high school.
Oh, that was the motivation.
Yes, yes, because that's when you go to visit the girls' schools, all these funkies. There was all these basketball games and all these things. I was in the school choir, and a lot of practice used to happen on the weekend. And, you know, we'd be going to Moi Girls to, you know, so that was obviously a treat for a teenage boy. So at some point I realized being at home being a day scholar is not working. So became a boarder in Form 3 and Form 4. So that was also a huge transition. My first night as a boarder, I was introduced to bedbugs.
Oh, wow.
Which I had never met before.
Wow.
And I didn't know there were bed bugs. I think the previous occupant of my bed was, you know, had a sort of a collaboration with them. There was hundreds of them, and I didn't know what they were. So the first 2 nights, I'm waking up just itching all over, and I don't know what this is. And then someone told you the bed bugs. And when we finally removed the mattress, there was you know, like a thick line of them. So that was my introduction to boarding. But then I think at some point just found my own level and then got to Form 4 and decided I have to study law. And so I escaped with an A-, which was
Very
really
nice.
good. Yeah, so
Very nice.
but that was the A- was about law. Yes, because that's what we had to
you
do.
wanted.
Yes,
Again, aiming for the moon, not the stars.
Yes, because
Yeah.
everyone was aiming for an A, and I would say no, I don't want an A. I want an A-. That's what I need.
Interesting. Interesting.
I think I was a cocky young man.
Well, you kind of are grounded. Interestingly,
Yeah.
did you? What were your choice of, or rather, where did you get? It was help from there. Moving on.
Help. Again, I told you, cocky young man. So I remember having this conversation with my dad, and I told him, Dad, I've looked around at the guys who are applying to join campus and the queue, and I don't think that I need help. I think we can afford it.
Wow. That's interesting.
Yeah,
Making a decision for him.
Yeah, so now is when I think about it, I was like, no, I'm making a decision for his pocket. I wonder what he thought. So I always wonder I wish I could ask him, what did you think of that? Because I guess on one hand, you're thinking, how are you making a decision about our finances?
Yeah. On the other hand, this is very good that you're doing this.
Yes. On the other hand, that you're able to think that way, that there are more needy students and we are not. So I didn't apply for help, and that was me telling a conversation with me and Dad. He said, no thanks.
And so where did you go to campus?
University of Nairobi, the School of Law, the Parklands campus. Yeah, so that's where we were.
Spent your law is 5
4
years?
4
4
years.
years. 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your transition from high school to uni, you do have that period in time.
Yeah.
Like at that time, it was almost 2 years.
Yes.
Yeah. What did you spend that time doing?
I went to Strathmore College and to study accounting. So I didn't care for accounting, but my dad thought it was a good idea. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. At some point I didn't really like it, but then I was like, okay, let's just do it. And I was passing, so it's fine. So I did CPAs, Certified Public Accountant, Section 1, 2, 3, as it was then. I think now the grading system is different. I think now it's intermediate. Something, yeah. So so that's what I did.
All through. That was a lot of the time you would spend.
Yes.
But at this time, you're also a young man. You're not in high school anymore, so you're probably are realizing more about life beyond even just career. There's the social elements about life. There's also what's happening around you. That time, how is your situation all around?
Well, Strathmore kept you quite busy.
And it's also a strict school.
Yes, it was strict. So, you're there all day, Monday through Friday. And I think we used to go, because you had all these assignments, so then you'd go to the library on Saturday. So I think we're quite strict there. So there wasn't much happening. And then I wasn't really involved in anything extracurricular. Remember I told you I was sort of a toe-the-line guy, so I wasn't the kind of kid to go party. Not that I had a lot of space to do it. I think my dad was a pretty strict fellow. But yeah, there wasn't really much going on. I did, however, have a major shift religiously because I grew up Catholic.
Okay.
Because my mom was Catholic. Dad was Presbyterian, PCA.
And they managed all through. They remained that way.
Yes, they remained that way for a long time, I think, as we were growing up. So I think because, how they managed the potential conflict or that tension was, Dad would take us to church and wait for us. In the car. We buy the newspaper and wait for us. So
take it to Catholic church. Right, yeah. But when would he go to his church? After that?
He wouldn't.
Oh, okay.
He would just sit in the car. So that was how we grew up. So if you are not feeling church, you stay with Dad. You tell Mama, I'm staying with Dad today, and you help to read the newspaper or you go to the car wash or whatever it is. or you go to church with mom. And then, so what happened is immediately after high school, in fact, the week after we finished our KCSE, Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education, I met a neighbor, a friend who became a really good friend. Her name is Beatrice, and she introduced me to what was then called Faith Evangelistic Youth Ministries, which was the youth arm of Faith Evangelistic Ministries of, is she called Teresia Wairimu?
Yes.
Yeah.
Reverend Teresia Wairimu.
Yes. So I went for the youth.
She had a Nelson somewhere there.
Yes, at that time she was Wairimu Nelson, yes. So this is February 1997, just out of high school. And I'm taken, no, January actually, so I'm taken to this youth ministry. It used to meet at Ufungamano, a place called Ufungamano, on, I think, one Saturday a month. And I go for this worship service, and it blows my mind because I'm Catholic. I've grown up Catholic, so Catholic was a bit more calm, and you sing the same song all the time, and we used to have fights with my mom because I used to tell her, "Mom, church is boring. I want to go to church, but it's boring." No offense to anyone who's Catholic right now, but that was my experience. So I go to this. And what would you call it? Is it like a charismatic set of evangelistic?
It's upbeat.
Yeah.
It's not as chill as Catholic is.
And we're dancing and we're doing all these moves, Amen Itendea, and all these things. We're singing all these songs. It completely blew my mind.
Jesus looks fun now.
Yeah. And then the preachers, there was Pastor Bob, Pastor Roche, the late Pastor Roche, and there was someone else who I can't remember. And their sermons were fire. I'm connecting, I'm hearing everything that we're saying. I'm remembering the sermon word for word. So that was January, and I was like, okay, I like this thing. And then there was an altar call, which I was like, okay, I'm not sure about that, but I like this. Then I go for the February one, and I respond to the altar call.
Oh, wow.
Like, yes, and that is when I gave my life to Christ. That was February 15th, 1997. So that was humongous because I don't even know what that means. Remember, at home, mom is Catholic, so she doesn't quite understand what it is we're doing. Dad doesn't go to church. So I go home and I say, Mom, I am saved. And then we have those conversations, and they are concerned, like, what is that? Which church is that? Because they didn't know where I was going anyway. And so I think they freak out. And they decide to say, okay, maybe this Catholic church in Kiambu maybe is actually boring, as he has been saying. Let's try St. Andrew's PCA Church. So
which is where your dad would be going?
So now Dad gets to go because it's now a PCA church, and Mom tags along reluctantly. But okay, for once now we have English service, maybe there's an organ, and so it's better. But I think the reason why we went to PCA was to try and, control me so that I don't drift into some...
Faith becomes a big worry for parents. Because they're like, I don't want you in a cult, I don't want you in, I don't want you to go get confused. So that's how, I guess, maybe God used me to catalyze that shift from now Catholic church, because over time, Mom gets into the induction classes to become a priest, to join the church. I'm forgetting the ladies at PCA, the
Guild,
the Women's Guild. Yeah,
but before the Women's Guild, you need to be inducted to become a member of the church.
True.
So I guess it's some kind of maybe discipleship or onboarding kind of thing. So she does that program, and at the end of the program, gives her life to Christ.
Oh, wow.
So then, so now she starts drifting out of the Catholic and more into the PCA. And so all of a sudden, we're all happy because Dad is going to church, and we're all very happy that Dad is in church, and Mom has sort of reluctantly drifted and accepted. And we're in a much funkier church, more middle class. you know, and you know, there's a nicer crowd, so it's also cool because you know St. Andrews was pretty uppity, yeah. So that was the big shift for me, socially.
Socially, so it's largely socially and spiritually.
Yes.
And that's 27 years ago. You have remained in the path, or has
Yes.
there been in ins and outs?
I have remained in the path,
Yeah.
but I think I was, early on, I was a rebellious kind of follower of the faith. Maybe not rebellion. I would challenge stuff. Like I was comfortable having a beer or having a drink, and of course among Christian fraternity, they're like, "Hey, are you sure?" But I'll tell them, "But I have observed my dad drinking. He's the one who taught me how to drink. He'd have one beer and that was it, or one glass of wine and that was it. So I know how to control it. I know Jesus turned water into wine. So what are we talking about?"
As the lawyer, you would become, you'd provide proper arguments for it.
Yes, yeah. So I'm like, as long as I can control it, I'm good. So to some extent, I may have been perceived as a bit of a rebel, but I think I was just trying to figure it out. So
did you
now
ever go
that I'm
back
in this
to
place,
FEM?
yes, I continued going to FEM.
Okay.
We always went for the Saturday, the one a month, through for the 2 years that I was out of campus. Yeah, that was that was
out of high school.
Out of high school. Yeah,
right.
before campus.
That's an interesting shift, and I mean it comes at an interesting time, because then already you, as you say, pretty motaratara before then, and then now here you've added salvation to it. So your new do your friends and circles change in terms of who you are relating with, and does being in the faith also cause you to realize some things, maybe around purpose, around a quest for something more meaningful?
Already being a fairly compliant kid, so my circle of friends didn't really change.
That's the word,
yeah. So because I was never really into, that going out, we used to call it raving those days. I was never really that kind of person. I'll go out once in a while, but not really. The crowd that used to drink was a heavy drinking crowd, especially from the Ndegwa, that middle class group, was never really my kind. So I sort of just stayed there. I think that I had a hunger, for spiritual connection, just to know God a bit better. And because even when I was in high school and still Catholic, I think I enrolled for some catechism classes and I got confirmed. We used to have confirmation classes. I remember then the late Cardinal Maurice Otunga came to our school, and then, I even got a new name. I think I liked the name Christopher. That was the name I chose.
Okay.
But it's not in any of my documents.
Just the baptism certificate.
Yes. But I think throughout teenage, I had friends who were born again who used to tell me about this thing, which I never used to understand. So FEM really, I found a home, and I began to explore my spiritual side a bit more. Try and read the Bible a bit more, listen to a few more pastors. I think that was when I started listening to people like now Bishop Karaoke and those kind of things. So yeah, I was that kind of weird kid. I was sort of.
That's a good weird.
Yeah. And I think it just sort of grounded me. Yes, and this friend called Beatrice. I ended up being very close to her family because they were all born again, and it was a nice family to hang out with. Well, there were 4 sisters, so there was other incentives.
Yes. For you and your brothers.
Yes. But then, but it was the kind of neighbor home where everyone used to congregate. You go, and it was a comfortable space. So I think that formed my friendship circle. And so we'd play cards, we'd play badminton, we'd play, we'd do stuff. Like, it was just a nice, easy crowd. And I think I always wanted to, I don't know whether it was maybe because I was a firstborn, I always wanted to try and prove to my parents that you don't need to be so strict on me. I know what I'm doing. I'm able to do good stuff. I can make good choices. So I think that was a mantra for me, to try and do the right thing so that I win my independence from my parents. So that was it.
Interesting. And then now, so you already used to Fungamano, to St. Andrews, and now you start studying at Parklands for your university. What are the memorable things that you take from your university years?
Oh, university was a huge shift for me. So if you go back to the primary school, I was the A student, top student, top athlete. I was really a star. Even if I say so myself. Then I go to Starehe and I discover other stars and I become diluted. I am nobody. And I really hated that part. I never got to be a school prefect in Starehe, and that ate me. I really hated that. Academically, of course, I was average. Sports, nowhere. So I think the only fun thing I did was school choir in Starehe. So fast forward to campus, I now come to campus with a determination to shine again. I'm looking for, I want to be somebody. So I entered campus with some very clear goals. One, I wanted to make as many friends as possible.
Okay.
Because I think in high school I was
shielded a bit.
Yes, a bit, a bit withdrawn, because I'm struggling with all this shift. So I want to make friends, and I want to meet people, and I want to mingle, and I want to do stuff. So that was goal number one. Goal number two was I wanted to travel. I wanted to travel around Kenya and also hopefully outside the country. This was also the season when a lot of Kenyans were traveling to either to India or to the US. So I had a lot of cousins traveling. So I used to feel like I'm always the guy on this side of the glass waving by at them who are going. So I was like, I want to be on the other side to be waved at. So I wanted to travel. What was the other goal? I wanted to get a girlfriend. Yes, I need to explore this thing of getting a girlfriend. And I wanted to be in student leadership somehow. So those were
4 clear goals.
Yes.
Again, you aim for each. Do you get them?
Yes, all of them. But something interesting happened. So as I joined campus, I meet a friend who tells me about an organization called ISEC. Which then was called, the long form was Association of Students Interested in Economics and Commerce, but it wasn't limited to students of economics and commerce. So I think over time, the name shifted and became, the acronym became the name. Yeah. Yes. So I joined ISEC, and ISEC still does run an international exchange program. And I mean, the thought behind it is to, create cultural understanding, so allow people to experience different cultures. So what happened when I joined ISEC, they had, they had very, very serious programs, very thorough programs. It was all student-led. I mean, you go into your first ISEC meeting and your mind is just blown by how serious these young people are, and they're saying such high-minded things, and someone who's in second year or third year is saying the way they've just come from Germany, they were doing what, and so you're like, wow, that's what I want. So I realized, okay, so inside this ISEC I can travel, and then, I can probably get a girlfriend, and yes, and I'll get to meet many people. I'm in an organization where I'm meeting many people from even different universities. So ISEC really shaped, and then you get to do stuff. So, and there's a path to leadership. So I joined ISEC, and
in your
first year, my second month in.
Which is the right time to actually do those things.
Yes. So I completely immersed myself. I lost myself into that space. And ISEC was a very inspiring space because, as I said, when you're new in ISEC, you're meeting people who are traveling the world, they're doing projects, they're going to do fundraising calls, so they're going to meet the managing director of Kenya Airways, the marketing manager of, and you're like, wow, how do you talk to them? How do you meet these people? You know, the first time I ever wore a suit was in ISEC at a dinner, a corporate dinner. First time you're in a hotel, first time seeing a buffet meal in a hotel. So ISEC completely was my life. In fact, I like to say I majored in ISEC and minored in law.
In law. Yeah.
So that
it came with the travels, it came with the leadership position, it came with social circles, it came with the girlfriend.
Yes. Who ended up being my wife.
She was also in Amneseka?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
But she was in Catholic University, so we met in one of the
ISEC things.
Yes, so
it's so interesting to set goals and work towards them. Are you consciously working towards them, or once you set them, then you've sort of like spoken to all your senses, and somehow you don't need to keep reminding yourself, but they are somewhere at the back of your mind? Or is it like, are you the kind to set them, put them next to your bed so that you see every day this is the goal?
I think I'm the latter. I tend to set them and now keep tracking.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So I thought it was unique to me, and then I realized, it's just a personality.
It's working.
I'm choleric, so that's how I plan. It's always been set the goal and go. In fact, I think now being older is when I've realized, it's never that serious, just, it's good to have the goals, but generally work in that direction, but not too heavy. But then I was, this is what I want to do, and no one is stopping me. This is.
I like how you phrased it. You majored in ISEC and minored in law.
Yeah. Yes.
And I'm sure probably most of your social circles have ended up being like, professional acquaintances and other important friendships.
Yes.
Friendships after. But I also want to hear about the law.
Yeah.
Was pursuing it what you thought it would be? Was it, much younger when you're reading these books about Jomo Kenyatta and the history of Kenya, you're sort of planting seeds. Does it make sense more then as you study law? Are you find what area of law is from the vastness of it, which one is the one that's piquing your interest the most?
So the simple answer is no, it wasn't meeting my expectations. It was pretty disappointing, I must say. I don't know if any of my lecturers will get to watch this.
Yeah.
But I think there was what you see on TV when you hear about legal shows and those kind of things, like Suits and those kind of things, and that's what you imagine it's going to be. But then you go in and the theories, the subjects you're doing, it was pretty dreary stuff. When you're doing evidence, evidence 1, evidence 2, criminal procedure 1, criminal procedure 2, it was so
taxing.
Yes. I think there's only two units which I really liked. One was public international law, where we're learning about geopolitics and those kind of things. So that was again politics, the geopolitics. So that combined, that was fun for me. And intellectual property. I loved intellectual property, so that was a high point for me. So that was interesting. But the rest of the stuff was just boring. And I think also the lecture style at the University of Nairobi, I really wish it would change, because it's very, it's note-taking, not what you would.
I truly hope that any university has now significantly shifted, and that's not the style anymore, because no one wants to be dictated for notes. And that is, in hindsight, would you rather have pursued political science?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'd probably have done. Well, if I knew about it, I'd probably have done that. But also knowing about what I know about law now, maybe I'd still do law. Yeah, because law is pretty foundational, even in governance space. Because governance is really about how to organize society, and it's all law. So it works both ways, but I think I would have been a more engaged student if I did something like political science. I have a dream one day of doing a master's in international relations or something. I think I'd be more engaged because that's a more natural area of passion for me. I know people who are passionate about the law, and I know that's not me. I'll pass, I'll do the exams, but no.
So, and your time there is moving with all these many things. So at that point, let's talk about your dating. Do you like, how is dating for you at the time with this girl that you've met from Catholic University?
So dating was an interesting challenge for me.
It's interesting challenge, okay.
Because I was a permanent guest of the friend zone. Yes.
Everyone here has, it looks like they identify.
Because I was a nice boy. You want to be this nice guy, and you're treating the girls nicely, and you're being a gentleman, and you're listening to all their sob stories from their boyfriends, and you're wondering, okay, I'm here.
Yeah, like, why are you complaining about all of this when I'm here?
We have this connection. I come and spend time here. We connect. I'm the shoulder to cry on. So I was friend zone quite a bit.
By one or more?
Many. Very, very many. So the interesting thing is that the girl who ended up being my wife, when I met her in first year, she was a pretty strict girl then. Guys used to be afraid of her, myself included, so I liked her from afar. Yes, I think the strongest line I threw was, "I like your eyes." Bas.
And then you say that as you look away.
You're like, yes. So I never made a move until fourth year.
Fourth year, wow.
So, but then now in between that was, a lot of friend zoning, which was very painful because sometimes, you'd save up and, take a girl on a date because you're a gentleman, you want to treat her well, and then you choose the expensive restaurant, then was called Wimpy. And you go to Wimpy and you spend 1,000 shillings, and then you pop the question for, so I was hoping that maybe you and I, and you're like, well, I like you as a friend. It's not you, it's me. And I'm like, okay. Can I get my 1,000 back? I've really saved up this money for a long time. So I think that was my experience. And so much so that by the end of second year, I decided, okay, I'm done with being a good boy, good guy. I'm done. This is not happening. So I need to figure out, how do you become a bad boy? Yes.
I'm on a new mission.
Yes. And so my choleric thing kicked in, and the goal was become a bad boy within a year.
And the checklist is simple. Just don't listen to her.
Exactly.
Interrupt her, mansplain. Yes. What else, guys? Help me.
Pretend that she's not there.
Like ignore her calls. The cheat code is simple. But did you manage to?
Yes, I did.
Oh, because it was a mission.
Yes, it was a mission. I needed to learn how to do it, learn how to ignore her. So if you arrive at the bus stop, don't go and say hi.
Wait for her to come in.
Stand where you are and just ignore her until when she comes to say hi, then you're like, oh, hi. You are there. All right.
Oh dear.
Learn how, because remember, being a nice guy, I think I took pride in being a nice guy. Like I never had any fear of visiting friends, lady friends, female friends, even at home. Like I was never afraid of their fathers. I'd be like, but I'm doing nothing, and I'd go and farm handshake and say, hi, my name is, Ranja, Andrew, and yeah, I'm here to see Sarah or Jane or whoever it is. So it was never a thing for me. But then also, that also meant that I was this guy who, I was more interested in becoming your friend. So that's how I ended up in the friend zone. So I realized I need to stop trying to become a friend. And if I meet whoever, Mary, Jane, and I immediately, start throwing lines and, yeah, I'm not interested in your sob stories. You start telling me sob stories, I ignore you. So I became that. I became mean. I became mean. I became rough. It was not a... I think looking back, if there's anything I regret, it was learning how to be a bad boy.
And setting out to actually learn to. But it's understandable why you would set, for that, because there's this goal. The first strategy to achieving this goal is not working. So let's use the other route.
So within a year I kind of figured it out, and unfortunately to devastating effect, because now suddenly I found myself with 2 girls who are interested. And yeah, I'm not, because I've achieved the bad boy status now. And at some point...
Were they any of the previous ones that you had attempted? Or?
No, these are different ones. And yeah, and so I think it was just mean. It was really mean. And so weird coincidence. One was in Kampala. Remember, I'm in ISEC, so we are traveling around. Yeah, so I go to a 3-day conference, and I'm on a mission. Yeah, to be a bad boy, meet a girl. Yeah, just start. We used to call it dating.
Wow, it was actually called dating. Throwing lines.
Yeah, throwing lines.
And because the idea was the dat.
Yes.
Oh my God.
And
Cupid's arrow.
Yeah, so I met this girl, and then back home there's someone else who I'm also dating, talking to back in Nairobi, and just happened that they had the same birthday.
As you? Oh, both of them?
Both of them. So it was completely weird.
Oh, wow.
So I'm planning something with the girl in Kenya, and then the girl in Kampala says, can I come? So at some point I realized, okay, so I have to tell her, it's not working. It's not, because they can't be both here. These birthdays, I wish it was like 2 days apart. Then I would have figured it out.
At least.
So I think at that point is when it hit me, when I had to break someone's heart, and she was really crushed.
The Ugandan.
The Ugandan. And because I had a friend in Kampala who told me, hey, you messed up.
I see where the KOT versus UOT started.
Yeah.
That's the genesis.
And so I think at that point it hit me that this bad boy thing is not good. I've just hurt someone for no good reason. I went after her. I nikamuingiza box. I made her interested, and then, but I wasn't interested, and I was just So I think at that point is when I decided, no, okay, I'm done with the bad boy. Let's try and return to the good boys. But now I had learned too much bad boys, so and learning some of those things took time. Yeah.
But it's very interesting that in all of that, it's your own reflections towards going, bad boy style, and your own reflections towards coming back. It really goes to affirm, what is spoken about. Train your child in the way they should grow.
Yes.
They will probably depart, but maybe not too long. They'll find their path
They'll
back
explore.
Exploring is part of the journey, and then they find themselves back. I had my mom recently say, hata kama you've had a moment of like deviation, you're that child. I know that you won't lose your path. You cannot lose your path. You'll probably deviate a little, and we'll see you, but you'll quickly find, and because you're grounded. Your dad is present, your mom is there with you. You have it's such a great foundation that was laid that manifests in this kind of thing, where you even feel the remorse around hurting someone.
Yes.
Your conscience is not so seared that you're able to find your journey back. That's really nice. But there's also a bit of remorse, not remorse, but you're not quite getting that deep fulfillment with law. So do you add it on with something? ISEC is giving you so much. As you come now to exit school, you're looking back, do you see a good last 4 years that you can use to move into the next dimension for you?
Yeah, because, well, so ISEC was really 80% of
your
campus for me, because it provided my social circles. It was the thing I woke up to do. I really minored in law because we cut a lot of classes. We used to cut a lot of classes. I was that kid who was always looking for. I had two friends who I owe my degree to. One called June, another one called Patricia, who would take good notes, and I would go and photocopy their notes and read their notes.
Towards exam period.
Towards exams, like 24 hours to the exam, and just scrape through. So ISEC was my life, and I think it gives me such a strong sense of purpose. I'm doing something important, and you're meeting important people. You're organizing big projects. At some point, I'm becoming a senior official. At some point, I ran for, we used to call it president of the University of Nairobi chapter. I didn't make it, but I got vice president, and then after that, went for national vice president. So I was national vice president for finance. So I'm feeling like I'm doing something important, and then started traveling, first trip to Europe, went to Germany, went to Switzerland, went to Egypt.
Oh, wow.
So
that's significant.
So 2001 was a big year for me, because that's when I went to Egypt, Uganda, Switzerland, and Germany.
All courtesy of ISEC?
Yes.
One after the other?
Yes. Yeah. And you're a campus kid, so suddenly you're a high flyer. Even your classmates don't quite understand. How are you traveling? How are you getting on a plane? How are you? We have a cut next week, and you're traveling. I was like, yeah, so you carry the notes you read on the plane on your way back, and you come in straight from JKIA exam room, do the cut, and do the exam. So ISEC was big, and at some point, as vice president finance national, I was managing a 4 million shilling budget. So when you're 20,
that's
22,
big.
23, it's a big deal.
That's a heavy CV on you.
Yeah, so it was a strong, and so I'm feeling like I'm in leadership. I am in leadership, and this is not just University of Nairobi. It's across the country. 4-5 chapters across different universities. So I'm feeling a sense of strong sense of fulfillment. So law is just the thing that I am doing. So I actually struggled with law quite a bit. Collected a couple of supplementaries papers. Oh, wow. Had to recite a few papers.
So did it end up taking longer than?
No.
Okay.
No. I again scraped through. But it nearly took longer because there was a paper that I was supposed to receipt which hadn't been set in good time, so it was set 4 days to graduation. So we did it, and it was marked, and
you graduated.
And we graduated.
Okay.
So that was really close to the wire, down to the wire. But then, so ISEC has built me up to this kind of person who's doing important things. I'm on an international subcommittee of this. I'm doing this. I'm doing this on this. And then
you have acquaintances from all over the world.
Yes, yes. And we are the cool kids in University of Nairobi who have emails, and we know how to use an email.
ISEC.net.
Yes, and we know how to make PowerPoint presentations, and we meet. The likes of the then Frankie Reri, who was, I think, at CBA, and then later at Housing Finance. So you're meeting all these important people. So you're feeling pretty important.
There's a sense of achievement and identity validation.
Yes. But then immediately after campus, I am now going into the legal internship program called Pupillage.
Pupillage, yeah.
So I'm completely unprepared for that because pupillage is entry level. Like you're an intern, you're a nobody, your work is to do photocopies and to, those kind of things. But I'm used to doing policy level work. I'm used to having conversations with important people. And here I'm being told, no, you just make sure you photocopy properly. So I had a huge crash. From the guy who's doing important things to now I have to do law proper it's killing me. I hate it. Yeah, so in a sense...
6 months.
Huh?
Was it 6 months or a year?
Then it was a year. Now
A
it's
year.
6 months,
Whoa.
yeah. So so I wasn't prepared
For that.
For the crash.
That was your 2004?
This is 2003.
Okay.
Yeah, because we graduated end of 2002, so it was 2002, 2003 that year. Yeah. So that was, yeah. So, so in a sense, Isaac built me up, but then set me up for a huge crash.
Is there, just on Isaac, is there a way to like continue the alumni?
Yes, you can.
Like some network of sorts where that what you've been doing while in campus doesn't end that because you've exited, or...
Yes, well, there is, but the engagement level completely changes. Yeah.
Of course, also because people's lives are changing.
Yes, yes.
There is in this institution that's holding you together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity. I could have pursued Isaac a little bit.
Yeah.
But there was tension with my law degree because I needed to do the pupillage program.
Yeah. And it's intense.
Yes. If I didn't have to do the pupillage, I'd probably have gone on and served in Isaac internationally, and maybe ended up in another university in another country and done an internship there and maybe a different career path.
Yeah.
But you needed by law to do the pupillage. So it was a tough choice. Like I had to let go of Isaac to be able to come and do this thing. I'm
curious, what do you take though from your pupillage year?
Pupillage was hard. Again, so I, if you remember from joining campus, I have these crazy goals. I want to do all these things, but then I'm in pupillage. I am doing law, which I don't like, not so much. I'm not really appreciating. I hadn't gotten to a point where I understood it. Now I understand it. I appreciate it. I'm good at it. But then you're an intern, and intern is doing you're arranging the files. You're photocopying. You're the guy who... I become an excellent handler of the photocopy machine. Paper jam was... I was the guy. Call me, I'll sort out your paper jam. We used to have a binding machine to bind documents, a velo binder, and then the spiral binder, so I was excellent at that. I didn't have a very good experience. I had a choice of two law firms to go to. One which would have paid me 5,000 shillings, where I think I would have had a much better experience. Being the lawyer there, I think would have exposed me to a bit more of how the practice works. And then the second choice was a wealthier firm that was paying me 8,000 shillings. So 5,000, 8,000, of course I go for the 8,000. But then the bigger firm, I didn't learn much. Yeah, the supervision wasn't top notch. It was it was a lost year. I feel like it was a lost year, and I spent most of that year frustrated because of crashing from this big things I'm doing in Isaac to now just being
this thing that you're not ready
dreary
for.
thing. But it was also an interesting year because now I had a girlfriend.
Right.
And so navigating a relationship now
while doing pupillage.
Yes, and she's gotten a nice job in a multinational where she's earning 20,000 shillings, and I'm struggling here with my 8,000. So I'm feeling like I'm not impressing her enough. So those
the wimpies are not.
Yes.
Right.
So yeah.
We are hosting today at DDwithMaqC the one and only Andrew Ranja, and just a bit of a disclaimer where we are shooting from today. They've decided, we are shooting this on a Friday, they've decided to have a bit of entertainment, and it's a live band. So should you hear a bit of background noise, we will seek to manage it and see how the conversation unfolds. But we've covered up until your pupillage year. This year you say that, would have, you're leaving a high, you're coming, there isn't the right kind of supervision and the right kind of structure to get pupillage going. The result of the pupillage, though, is usually you then enter, what's the next step?
So the way it was then is that you would then, with pupillage, then you go to Kenya School of Law,
Right.
but you don't actually sit any classes because the subjects that we would have covered in Kenya School of Law, we had covered at the University of Nairobi. So you just apply, get your exemptions, and you get your diploma in law. So pupillage was 1 year, and then there's a few months waiting for the paperwork and the exemptions to go through, and then once that is done, you apply to the High Court for admission, to the Chief Justice as for admission as an advocate of the High Court. So that's, yes, that was the end of that process.
And you joined the bar?
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, which was exciting because now
it was a monumental...
Yes,
yeah.
It is the culmination of these 4 years plus one and all those kind of things. For me, the process of joining the bar was also interesting because well, the ceremony of it. Because remember, I have an interest in politics. I am fascinated by swearing-ins, people holding the Bible. I have copied President Moi holding up the Bible saying, me, me. And so here I am, you're admitted to the bar, you hold up the Bible and you're sworn in. So I remember telling a friend, this is the first of many swearing-ins.
Oh yeah.
So that was I was fascinated by that ceremony. Haven't been sworn in again, but hopefully it will happen soon. Yes. Yeah.
You're at that point you're not, so you're an advocate. You do not necessarily at that time choose a legal path to pursue. That comes after.
Yes, you. So at that point, when you're an advocate, you can practice in any.
So it's general practice.
Yeah. So your general practice, you can do anything. Specialization tends to come as based on your interest, and you can pick. This is my area of interest, but you're allowed to do anything. A lot of the time, what you start doing is influenced by your pupillage experience. So there was after pupillage there was a brief space which was like we call holding over, where you're in this space where you're not a pupil but you're not an advocate, so you're sort of holding on somewhere, holding over somewhere. So the place where I was holding over, we did a lot of property work, legal work, which is called conveyancing. And even my pupillage experience, I was in a conveyancing department.
Okay.
So I ended up getting
more towards that,
doing conveyancing and real estate work. And also the opportunity in the law firm where I was holding over, there was an opportunity to get hired in the conveyancing department. So I angled towards that, and that's how I ended up doing a lot of property law.
A lot of your early career was then in property law.
Yes.
I'm fascinated by that world of property, land, and how even at the present age there is all sorts of scams, there is all sorts of situations that are not right and that really require the legal eye to check. What are some of the experiences that you've had that you had around that time as you're doing conveyancing that stand out for you?
Well, the big one was because conveyancing or property law is really helping people who are buying or selling property, whether it's a land or a house or something like of that nature. Maybe, or they are taking a space as a lease, either a long-term lease or a short-term lease, a tenancy. So it could be someone who's starting a shop, trying to set up a business in a mall, and they are taking a lease. And so there is the paperwork that you do, preparing if it's a purchase of a land, an agreement for sale, or a transfer of land. If it's a lease, drawing up the lease instrument. But then, so there's the paperwork part, and then there is the registration of the paperwork with the government. Now, the registration is where, you learn a lot. When you're green and you discover that there's a lot of corruption in the space. So I think that was the first time I came across this whole lack of integrity kind of thing, because I realized that, you know, there is an expectation that you have to bribe to get your papers everywhere, to register anything with the government office, with the judiciary, with like everywhere.
Is there choreographed delays just so that you feel the need as a consumer, you feel the need to, all right, is there a way I can expedite this? Is that how the system operates?
Yes, I imagine there's some level of sabotage. And to be clear, there's good people who work in these spaces, who care about the job and have integrity.
Absolutely.
But there's a significant group that will frustrate you, that
deliberately.
Your papers will go missing. You know,
and there's somewhere in a store.
Yes, or your application will be rejected. And you can tell because if there was some extra money to go with it, you know, it moves very quickly.
It wouldn't be the case. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember once registering something which would, I think it was a company that we were registering. And, you know, we registered it in 1 day.
Wow.
And this is a process that would ordinarily take us like a couple of weeks. But because, you know, it was backed by some funding, facilitation, you were able to move it very quickly. So I really struggled with that because I have grown up in a family where my dad has,
ethics
and my mom have told me, you know, ethics, we do things with integrity. But then here, it is a completely murky space where there's corruption at every turn. And you know, conveyancing, unfortunately, fortunately, is also the most lucrative part of, or one of the most lucrative parts of or aspects of legal practice. So a lot of lawyers want to get into that space. The most lucrative part is when you're doing work for a bank. So because banks are constantly helping people acquire property and providing mortgages and funding, so processing that paperwork is very lucrative. So there's a huge scramble among legal practitioners to get into the panel of a bank and to do some to do that kind of work. But then getting into the panel of a lot of banks requires some kind of facilitation. Doing the work, you know, the turnaround time for the banks, there's such pressure to turn around work that there's a lot of pressure to bribe officials at the government registry to get the work done quickly. So it's almost like you're dealing with corruption from every corner.
Almost angles, yeah.
I really struggled with that. That was, I think that was the big thing I learned, and I didn't like it at all. So I immediately started looking for an out. Yes. Yeah.
And what was your out, and after how long did you get your out?
The out was to try and see whether it is possible to queue, wait for the paperwork to be done without any kind of bribing or facilitation or kickbacks or anything. So, but then that would have required that I go and set up my own law firm because it just wasn't practical. And it's not that the place where I worked, you know, you are bad people or they want to be corrupt, but if you want to be practical and achieve anything, then you know, you have to grease the process. So I was determined to see, is it possible to do it differently? So it took me 3 years, but eventually I was able to set up a law firm. And that was my mantra, that is how we do it. We do it clean, we don't bribe, where we convince our clients to, our process is going to take a long time, it's going to be slow, but it's going to
be right.
Yeah, this is going to be, So that was the out. It was a difficult start.
And you did that early on, just after that period of conveyancing?
Yes, because I stayed I was stayed employed for 3 years. 3 years, yeah. So at the end of those 3 years, I quit.
You made a decision
and started.
I want to really hear that story from that point, because at that point, moving from that point, you formed the Man Ranja, you know, based on integrity, you formed your farm, and then many other things do come. I think my request at this time is to wrap it up with a hook. You know, we leave that hook of how the next journey unfolds, and then we can pick it from here the next time. I think it's a bit overwhelming. The noise is because these guys have a tune up. But as we do so, I would love you to just reflect as of the stage you're forming you're deciding to move and form your farm. I'd just love for you to speak to Ranja at that time, and the Ranja that, you know, that's some years back. It's 15, 20 years ago.
Yes.
Speak to that Ranja, what you would wish Ranja knew, and that's where we will pick up the conversation. What would you wish Ranja knew when he was starting?
Oh wow, Ranja, I wish, I really wish he knew how tough the journey would be. Choosing a journey of integrity, working with integrity is a tough journey, and you have to be patient. You're going to have to watch your peers move ahead while you're struggling and just not being able to make ends meet. But you will make it. You will make it. But it's gonna be tough. It's gonna change you. It's gonna make you sweat. It's gonna be tough.
And with that, that's the hook. We will know what that part has been. Yeah, we will come back and cover this in a couple of weeks' time, but the story will be aired back to back. So I must first thank you so much for creating the time this afternoon, even despite not feeling very well, and coming to share just your story by itself, from childhood from origin to your childhood, to growing up, to school, to visual, to Strath, to the years in between, and then I'm like, these are many, there are so many nuggets just to pull from each of these, which can be chapters of a book by themselves. Yes. And I love that you've gotten to reflect. I think the next time we are coming to continue the story, because we'll be picking it up from a place where you just told us how the journey has been rough, tough. You know, some things that have happened. We want to hear that reflection now in story form. You know, what are those moments, and what's that time? For now, it's a Friday evening. You can tell it's a Friday evening. The band is becoming more and more, so allow us to end there for the day. We will be back with DDwithMaqC soon.